proceed with workshop session 1. It is my pleasure to welcome Fernanda Prado. Ms. Prado is the founder of Confident Mind Limited in United Kingdom. She will present a public health framework for stress and anxiety regulation, moving from crisis response to preventive de-escalation. Please welcome Ms. Fernanda Prado.
Okay. Okay. So thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Time has become a very valuable commodity that we have now. So I thank you very much for being here and listening to what I have to share. Over the last few years, we have seen growing pressure on healthcare system, not only for physical illness, but for chronic stress, anxiety, burnout, emotional overload, and the nervous system dysregulation. Today, I want to explore how stress and anxiety regulation can be understood, not from only an individual clinical issue, but as public health and prevention issue. So this presentation today is not about replacing medicine, and I think that is very important to say because we have heard this for the last 2 days, yesterday and today. It's about complementing what we already have, right? And I think it's asking mainly if our intervention and if we're educating our nervous system and using all of this to complement as we can de-escalate before this stress becomes a crisis. But before, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Fernanda Prado. I came from a multidisciplinary background. I have taught, I still teach, I love teaching. I have students that become counselors. And my passion about teaching is that I think every time we teach, we empower others. So I truly believe that it's like an overflow, really, when we can share our knowledge. And I think that's what we're doing here today. I am a founder of Confident Mind in London, UK. It's a CPD qualified company because I also do training. And I'm also a civil diplomat and a mental health prevention advocate. And for me, this is not just the recognition of the work that I do, but I think this condecoration has actually allowed me to step into conversations and in places that I probably wouldn't have the opportunity to be in. So I'm very grateful to that. And as I said, my work focuses on the prevention side, psychoeducation, and practical approach to regulation. And the sparkle that started all of that is that I was diagnosed with anxiety and panic attack. And at the time, I was offered medication to help me with the symptoms. But I felt completely lost because I wouldn't have support of therapy for 1 or 2 years because that was the waiting time at the time in London. So that has led me into explore more this field. How could I actually help my mind and my body to work together and not have my mind working against me, because that was the feeling. So for that reason, I went deep into it, and eventually I wrote this book, Anxiety Reimagined. And I wrote this book to the younger version of me that felt lost, helpless, and didn't know what to do. So I wrote this with a very easy language so people can understand what they're going through. Because what I found about anxiety is that fear of the unknown, is not understanding what your mind is doing and how your mind links into everything that's happening with our body. Mind and body are linked and we cannot separate them. So if we can understand, if we can share the knowledge, we can empower people. And by that, we can de-escalate, right? I also understand that we need to have more evidence. And for that, I'm part of some bodies in London and internationally. So one of them is the Royal Society of Medicine, the Functional Neurological Disorder Society, the British Society and Clinical Academic of Hypnosis. Why? Because I think we need more evidence. Evidence is going to take us there so people can see, like what we shared before, what is the cost? How much does that cost, not only financially, but cost to people in their mental health, in their health. So that's the reason for me that is so important. So the scale of the problem, nearly 1 billion people are affected by mental health disorder. And I'd like to do a little caveat here that there is a lot of people that are not in this number, a lot of people that don't even have access to mental health support. So I'm from Brazil. I've been in London for 15 years. And there are parts in Brazil that we have no health at all, support for health. So if we think of mental health, it's non-existent, really, that support. So there is a lot more people if you look into this. Also, the World Health Organization has also reported 25% increase in anxiety, depression during the first year of the pandemic. And we have seen this across this room, the impact in all different areas after COVID. So this is a major global disability, and this impacts everywhere, impacting companies, like we were saying, impacting emergency service, impacting our day-to-day. So many people still do not receive adequate support, especially before the symptoms escalate into crisis. And this raises an important public health question. Are we investing enough in prevention? And can we invest before the collapse happens? Because what I hear sometimes is, Fernanda, I've been struggling with my mental health. But let me tell you, burnout, anxiety, they don't start overnight. We have neglecting ourselves. We learn that this is the new norm. And that is so detrimental because people are not asking for help anymore. So, in emergency settings, many patients present with symptoms that can mimic serious medical emergencies. This can be chest pain, dizziness, breathing difficulties, and an overwhelming fear. And all of these symptoms, they must be medically assessed first. We have to look at it. But many cases are later understood they could be panic-related or stress-related. So one of the most important public health questions is whether some of these crises could be reduced earlier through prevention, nervous systems education, and self-regulation. When I talk about self-regulation, it's about empowering people to take control so they don't need a therapist. They don't need to go to the hospital. They can understand what they're feeling, and they can actually self-regulate. So once we recognize the escalation often begins long before collapse, then we can have a better visibility. Prevention has to become more systemic, a better systemic approach. It cannot sit only inside an emergency care where we see that this is where it goes. It's important to understand that the money usually the countries have for prevention is not protected, is not ring-fenced. So it means if you have any crisis, if you have any emergency, that money is gone. And unfortunately, sometimes we don't have enough funding for that. So it just keeps us in that loop. How do we break this? This is the question that I ask. How can we help the system? Because what I really heard this morning, and I thought that was very inspirational, I think if we don't have a system, this is the opportunity for us to what the system could look like, or how can we input, how can we support? It's a blank canvas. There is so much we can still support. It needs to be extended across healthcare, education, community settings, where early intervention may help to reduce the crisis before they fully developed. This is where regulation can strengthen preventive care by giving people support earlier, by giving them tools, by teaching them before distress becomes an emergency. And not only to teach people, but to teach professionals. They don't need to be medics. They don't need to be nurses. I heard yesterday there is so many people that are working with the community, even in UK, that they are not therapists, they are not psychologists, they are not doctors, and still they're making great impact. So why can we use this? I like another term I heard this morning is like water, right? Why can we do this like water? Why can we share that? So one of the biggest misunderstandings about stress is the idea that it exists only in the mind. Stress is physiological, and the nervous system is constantly communicating with the body. We can't separate them. When activation becomes chronic, breathing changes, muscles tighten, digestion shifts, sleep becomes disrupted, and pain sensitivity may increase. In other words, the body moves out of the rest and regulation state, and then they move into protect and survival mode. This is what we know as flight, flight, and freeze response, right? Human physiology was designed for a short period of activation, followed by recovery. So we should have the peak and be able to recover. But now what happens is people remain activated for far too long, and the body was not designed to manage that. And that became the new norm. We're constantly on hypervigilance. We constantly stress. We're constantly overload. And not only talking about companies where we have to perform. At what cost? And that has become the new norm. The disconnection between mind and body, total. So the body is giving you awareness. The body is indicating that something is not right. What we do, we take a tablet. Then it doesn't work, we take two. But if the body is already telling you there's something that is not working, maybe it's already working on overloading. And I'm not here to say that medication doesn't have its place. It does, 100%. But if we're just managing the symptoms, we're actually not looking at the root cause. How we help people, really. So, the lemon experiment. I'd like to invite you to a very simple experiment together. So, if you feel comfortable, I would like to ask you to take a deep breath in, and maybe you can close your eyes. Or you can simply lower your gaze for a moment. So now, I want you to imagine, feel, or sense that you're holding a fresh lemon. Now imagine holding this lemon in your hand. That's it. Just allow. Imagine cutting open. And as you do, notice the smell. Oh yes, the zesty smell. Imagine it bringing closer to your mouth. And now, bite into it. Feel what it feels like. That's it. You can open your eyes. So coming back to the room, I want to share that for many people, even imagining an experience can trigger salivation. It can trigger even to that reaction, right? Why? Because the brain responds to the imagination as something real is happening. The brain does not know the difference, what is happening from what is pretending. And that's the reason the body feels the same way. So I wanted to ask you, because that tells us something very important. If the body reacts not only to reality, but also to perception, expectation, and interpretation, what would imagine if imagination can trigger salivation? What happens when the brain can repeatedly anticipate fear, danger, stress, catastrophe? How does the body respond? There we go. One of the clearest examples of mind and body connection is the gut-brain axis. The vagus nerve is one of the major communication pathways between the brain and the organs of the body, including the gut, and is responsible for activating the parasympathetic nerves, what actually can allow us to relax. When a person feels safe, breathing slows, digestion is supported, and the body it can shift because it understands it's in restoration process. But when stress becomes chronic, the body prioritizes protection over repair, because one of the main functions of our brains is safety. So it will protect us over no matter what. It was designed for that. So in most susceptible individuals, that can contribute to symptom exacerbation as gut dysregulation, particularly in these conditions such as IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. And this explains why patients can experience very real symptoms, even when structural investigation appears normal. So there is nothing wrong. But the feelings, everything is happening, is real. The suffering is real. And the physiology of it is real as well.
5 minutes.
Okay. So different conditions may present differently, but many share common patterns of nervous system dysregulation. In panic attacks, the body reacts as it's under survival. It's under a threat. In chronic pain, the alarm system can become overprotective. And in functional neurological disorder, symptoms can be genuinely disabling when the structural pathology does not fully explain their severity. But what it matters is all these symptoms are real for the people that are experiencing. And the goal is never to suggest they are imagined. It's to understand how protective responses can become chronic and dysregulated over time. And this is why multidisciplinary approach matters so much. Not either or, but together. Evidence increases supports that complementary approach alongside medical care has been giving very good outcomes. In IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, large trials and meta-analysis has shown meaningful symptoms improvement with CBT-based intervention and gut directory hypnotherapy, alongside standard treatment, In chronic pain, mindful-based approach have also been associated with changes in pain processing and improving in coping and quality of life, because we also know that muscles work in all or nothing. You cannot be half tense. You are either tense or not, all right? So, and in such conditions and functional neurological disorder, multidisciplinary care remains especially important. So again, it's not about replacing medicine. It's about being supportive, integrative, and preventive care. I think this distinction is extremely important. When we talk about nervous system regulation, we are not saying that symptoms are imagined, that the patient should avoid medical care, or that biology does not matter. That is not true. Quite the opposite. These approaches work when best integrated alongside medicine, physiotherapy, psychology, rehabilitation, multidisciplinary support. The aim is to help patients to develop tools for self-regulations earlier, because if they may not see a doctor, a specialist for 2 years, how much that can escalate. And not only that, being in a limbo of what is happening with me. And the symptoms are real, and no one can explain what's happening. So I think it's extremely important, the distinction when we talk about the symptoms. And there is a very important idea that I want that we can take and we can reflect on, that the body was designed to survive, but is not designed to be on survival mode forever, indefinitely. There is a detriment for the body. And when stress becomes chronic and nervous systems can treating activation as normal, like I said, the new norm, then safety becomes unfamiliar again. Because the body now thinks that I need to be hypervigilant 24/7 with the stress, with the anxiety. And that's why relaxation is not only about a mental idea, it's also a physical regulation process, and encourage part of the body to remember that it's safe to relax. And we don't have to be tense all the time. So, this is why early regulation matters from a public health perspective. If we can help people to recognize the stress earlier, how they can work to cope, to just relax, to know it's okay to relax. It's okay to pause, to embrace pause. I always say, people say, oh, COVID brought a lot of things. One of them is to embrace pause. We're like little hamster in those wheels. So embrace pause. And if we can access simple tools before escalation and we share that with people, we can reduce suffering, improve quality of life, and support healthcare systems and empower patients much earlier. We can't separate the system and people. It is all connected. And it's also a smart public way. So before I finish, I would like to invite you, not to prove what I'm talking, but simply to experience the concept for yourself. When we know that the mind settles, the body allows to regulate. And because we know the body and the mind is deeply connected, we can recover. So I just like to, just for a moment, just take a deep breath in and just mind your body at the moment, knowing it's okay to just relax for a bit. At your own pace, you can just take a breath and feel what it feels like to just relax for a moment. Notice your breathing. Maybe you can drop your shoulders, the tension, and allow your exhale to become slightly longer. And just observe what happens when the body gently invites out of protection, feeling that is safe. Sometimes we're so tense, we just need to relax. We don't even notice. So, not forcing, not performing, just absorbing observing. We can give our body that. We can allow the body to feel safe again. And as my last slide, I would like to leave you with a final question. Why do we wait until crisis to teach regulation? Because I see this. Sometimes after 2 years waiting for therapy, you're going to learn self-regulation. Why can't we intervene before? Why can't we share this before? And if prevention started earlier, we might be able to reduce suffering earlier too. And would benefit not only individuals, but the healthcare system as a whole. Because we would stop with so much pressure due to mental health. I do believe that the first step for change is awareness, but awareness alone doesn't do anything. We need more than that. So if I think the conversation today resonates with you, I would like to exchange ideas to know how we can better explore this, how we can better create awareness and share that knowledge, to contribute with individuals, family, society. Because what affects one person affects all of us. Thank you.
And that was an amazing day. Knowledge becomes more powerful when we can share with others and learn from others as well.